Friends, we begin today's episode with an admission. I love me a classic car show. And it's not just the cool cars you see there, it's also the amazing people you get to meet, and to somewhat of a lesser extent, but definitely more humorous, is the way people dress at these things. But I've always felt something is missing for me, even at the best of these car shows, because the cars of the people, at least my kind of people, are not represented there. And it's at this point that these cars are now, 20 plus years old, so they're kind of classic. So I always dream of a classic car show where it's nothing but cars from my formative years. Then I get a call from my friend Jacob at Mazda, and he says, "Would you like to drive our never been sold, new in the wrapper FD RX7 to a classic car show that is featuring nothing but 80s and 90s cars?" Now, to say I was floored by this call would be an understatement. This was like the woman from Weird Science saying she wanted to have sex with me. And with that, for the first time in my life, I felt like the prom king finally going to the party with the cool kids, with the hottest cheerleader in school. But there was one catch. Jacob said I couldn't have the car unless the way I dressed matched the time when the car was new. Now, this was a much harder challenge than one would think, because if the car was from the 80s, you could just dress like Michael Jackson and call it a day. But this car was from the early 90s, so what was I gonna do? Dress like I was in a band from Seattle? And then it hit me, divine inspiration, or really I should say historical inspiration, because rather than wearing a bra on my head or period clothes to match the car, I thought back to what was I doing when this car was new. And the funny thing was, I was working for a car company. I was an intern building BMWs in Munich, Germany. So with that, I present to you a historically accurate, very authentic, circa 1990s version of myself. But before we get totally rad with a bevy of 80s and 90s cars, let's take our super hot date on the scenic route to the cool kids party. So it's a funny thing about not so old cars. You have this perception in your brain, because they're not so old, that they're like, oh my God, super fast. But you never really drive them every day, and you're so used to cars with 500, 600, now 700 horsepower, and maybe that car from 24 years ago wasn't so fast. Well, we've got a lovely canyon road here, so let's see if 24 years later, reality matches up to the perception in your brain. Let's put our foot into it. Oh, it is definitely quick. Now remember, this is a light car, just under 2,900 pounds, and it's quick. It's a 5-second car. Back then, that was otherworldly. But now, Kias are faster than that. That Stinger GT we just drove, that's 4.7 to 60. Granted, it's an extra, 125 more horsepower and 1,000 extra pounds. So I roll in this morning with my FD Mazda RX-7 and turbocharger, and who shadows me, literally parked across, this is a beer garden, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And the mad scientist himself, Bisimoto.
Hello.
Sir, I was just talking about you.
Thank you,
But
MotoMan.
not
Appreciate
with,
that.
not with super cool cars like this.
Well, no worries.
With a Hyundai.
Well, this event is more of an 80s event. And
It's
my Hyundais have
amazing.
been newer ones. So I had to bring out something very special.
What's special? What is
What
it?
I have is a 1986 slant nose, original from factory, Flachbau.
Wait a minute.
Flat nose from
Bisimoto
Porsche.
did not touch the engine?
I didn't. All I did was an exhaust post chamber, custom post chamber for it, that allows me to remove any restrictions in exhaust because of power, but give a nice deep tone.
Are you feeling all right? Are you
Oh,
sure you're
it's
okay?
warm today. But above and beyond that, I did not touch the engine. The vehicle is so valuable to me, and I want to keep the essence intact.
That's
so I
amazing.
had to leave it factory. So it's still a factory 3.2 in it right now, which is still fun, but not enough power.
Yeah.
But it keeps that nostalgia going, which I really love.
Okay, so we got to tell them something, because you and I actually haven't seen this guy in a couple of months now.
It's been a while.
And twice in 1 week.
That is correct. And
it?
we don't know what's going to happen next week.
Yeah, I'm
Next
going to
week
see
could
you at
be
least
something
3 times
amazing.
next week.
Understood.
So, what is it, Monday or
Yes.
Tuesday, you and I We have a mutual friend we didn't know.
Yes, yes.
Ralph.
Ralph Jones from FCA.
But that
global head of design.
he's a drug dealer, isn't he?
He actually got me to Vipers. He's a bad influence. Had me drive his, and then after my romanticism with this car, I had to pick one up. So now I have a Viper. I have a 5th gen Viper because of Ralph.
2 Vipers.
The other one I can't talk about yet.
And
because I'm going to be very naughty with it, so I can't talk about that yet.
So you're going to have to come back on the show. We're going to have to talk about it.
That'd be good.
Okay, man.
That'd be fantastic. Good
Thanks.
seeing you.
Always good seeing you.
Enjoy afternoon. Take care, guys.
Great to see you, man.
Cheers. Likewise.
Remember that Lancia Delta Integrale HF that we drove? That I was nervous to drive because that's the kind of car I had on the wall of my bedroom. I'm like, oh my God, that thing's amazing. And by the time I got to drive it, right before it, I was like, that car's not going to be as good. I don't want to ruin my hero. And oh my God, it totally exceeded expectations. So here, it's what, 2,880 pounds, and this is a beautiful road. Really not so perfect because there's old parts and new parts, so it disturbs a light car, but still, this thing, oh my God. Not only is the road great, but this thing is so much better than I thought. I don't want to admit this, but I can kind of see why so many people want these things now. It's funny, on one hand, it's just like the Z32 in that it's a thoroughly modern day car, but one that is just more perfect because it's not spoiled with size, weight, and complexity. But at the same time, it's not like the Z32 in that it's over 400 pounds lighter, so you can have so much more fun with it. And that's where it's an undisturbed vehicle that was designed to be incredibly pure. It shines in an example like this, but can be used every day. Now, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out something rather unusual. Yeah, there were a ton of the usual suspects from the 80s and 90s, but what really jumped out at me were the unsung heroes. Stuff that you would never expect to see at a classic car show. Things like a Cadillac Brougham d'Elegance, or an Audi 5000 diesel, not turbo diesel, diesel with a manual transmission, both in perfect condition. And then there was my weakness, tons of Volvos. The one thing they didn't have was a Buick React. So I guess you can't win them all. If you know anything about these things, these are not exactly robust. The term delicate comes to mind. So now that we get back down into traffic here, what's it like to live with a car like this in 24 years' time from when it was the tour de force of power from Japan? Well, when it's not pressed, you can turn the air conditioning on. The air conditioning blows cold. It's a comfortable place to be. It's usable for someone my size at 6 foot. It's got a sunroof, which makes it an even more pleasant place to be. But then that leaves us looking at the interior, and I gotta tell you, this is where you're reminded that it is a modern day car, but there's only a hint of nostalgia here. For example, you've got this double din stereo, which says this is indeed from the 90s. Yeah, but it brings up a bigger point. There are real gauges here, people. There aren't like TFT screens, idiot lights, or some other like UX from Cupertino instead of the places cars are designed, even down to the bezels that surround every one of the 5 real gauges. Okay, so while they do awards in there, let's talk about our little group here, because it wasn't just me with the FD RX7. Come on with me and let me show you a couple of things. There's, of course, my favorite, the FD RX7, but there were 4 other cars to choose. Let's go to the other one, which was a very close runner-up, the Unos Cosmo. This is a coupe. This was going to be one of the Mazda, like Lexus type luxury cars, the Amati cars. This was going to be the 800 coupe. This one is a JDM. It actually is a right-hand drive car. The interior was mocked up to be the Amati interior, so it actually has an AM/FM radio that works in this country. And the engine, though, is the JDM engine, which is a 3-rotor turbo. So this is a 1.3 2-rotor turbo, sequential turbo. This is a 3-rotor 2-liter sequential turbo. This is 300 horsepower. Then over here, something near and dear to my heart, an FC RX7, but mine was an 86. It was a sport. super fun car. This is the single turbo 10th anniversary edition. This is an 88. It was only on offer in the white with the white wheels with the cool leather seats, and it has the equalizer. And then back to the Amati type thing. This was sold in the US as the Mazda 929, but it was going to be the Amati 1000, which was going to be a long wheelbase version of this with a slightly different body. And it was going to have, get this, a 4-liter V12 in a Mazda. And then last but not least over here, I think you can see what this is. This was an M Coupe concept, so it's a hardtop Miata. It is something that lives here in the US. It goes to a lot of car shows. As you can see, Mazda doesn't want people touching it, but oh my God, is it cool. Now, did I make the right decision or not? Think of that as like a bonus question. Which one would you have chosen to drive to Radwood? I'm gonna give you a little bonus here that's not a Mazda. I wanna show you this Toyota here because there's an interesting story to it. This is a completely new in the wrapper. I think it's an 86 MR2, but we know this guy who owns it. This is Mike Evanoff. He is one of the product managers over at Hyundai. Great guy, supercar guy. He's the guy that is the product manager on the Elantra Sport GT and the Elantra Sport, the guy making the thing with the funky rear suspension. Well, this is the car he had when he was in high school. Not the exact one. He sold that one after he beat it up. But then 6 months ago, a guy retired from Toyota and offered this car to him at his local Cars and Coffee. He just got to know the guy to the point where, check this out. Mike went and got the exact same plate made up from his high school car and had it reproduced, and he put it on his car, his new car, which is like completely new in the wrapper. So it's Mike's initials and Mr. 2. If that is not cool, or should I say here, rad, I don't know what is. Believe it or not, there is some practicality. There's some storage there. Storage and 2 hidden compartments behind here, obviously the rear there. And then there's storage in the door. Oh, speaking of that, I got in the car this morning. Usually when you borrow somebody's car, they would love it if you fill the tank with gas. Well, this was on the tachometer right in the center because they don't want you to put any gas in this car, reinforcing just how delicate it is. So thank you for loaning me your car and not forcing me to refill the tank. Now, if you couldn't tell, I absolutely loved this show. So much so I got to know the guys behind it, and the good news is it's not the usual guys that were in finance that ripped everybody off, and when the government chased them, some of them turned state's evidence on the other, where half of them got to go to jail and half of them got to keep the cars and the money. No, these are just normal guys like you and I that just happen to have Z32s, FD RX7s, or E30s, and they just wanted a place to show them off. Now, the show we're at today, this is the second one. The first one was a couple of months ago up in San Francisco where they had 50 cars. Today, they had 350 cars. And it's not one of these car shows where you have to get up at like 0:30 to sit and bullshit about cars with your friends. No, the start time was officially 11 a.m. and the setup time was 9 a.m. But people were so excited, they turned up at 7 a.m. And the future looks really bright because next year they have 4 events planned, 2 of which are in conjunction with like Chump Car and Lemons races. So if I look into my classic car crystal ball, this will absolutely become a permanent fixture on the annual calendar. So the only thing that I don't like about this, I didn't come up with the idea. But no matter who it was that first came up with the idea for this amazing yet original event, it is how we close out Season 8 of the old show. So I wish you a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and a joyous Festivus for the rest of us. And please join us beginning in January of 2018 when we kick off Season 9. Until then, I wish you a totally rad New Year.